And this woman walked up to her and she said, "My name is Rebecca. I work in reality television. I used to work on yachts when I was younger in New England. I've always had an idea to do a show about this. What do you think?" And my girlfriend was like, "I think it's a great idea. I want nothing to do with it. Call my friend Adrienne."
When you're driven, the need to accomplish a goal is relentless. Hard work and ambition compel you to do whatever's necessary. In my work as a personal injury trial lawyer for 18 years, it's common to meet driven people. Those with drive can have different personalities, careers, or backgrounds, but they possess one common factor. Despite their passions, driven people want to surround and motivate themselves with other driven people. If you want to learn how to overcome obstacles by learning from others, then tune in here. This is the Driven Crowd Podcast. Thank you for tuning into episode 87 of the Driven Crowd Podcast, fueled by Snellings Law. I'm your host, Scott Snellings. Today, I'm joined by Chef Adrienne Gang, a world-class culinary professional with over 20 years of experience in high-end, fast-paced kitchens. Originally from Cleveland, Ohio, she now calls South Florida home. Her impressive career includes cooking for legendary artists such as the Rolling Stones, Bruce Springsteen, and Jimmy Buffett, and catering for major events including Lollapalooza, the South Beach Wine and Food Festival, and PGA Tour tournaments. A familiar face from Bravo's reality TV series, Below Deck, Adrienne has spent nearly 2 decades cooking aboard private yachts around the world, while also dedicating her time to relief organizations, providing meals to victims and emergency personnel in areas impacted by natural disasters. Adrienne, welcome to the Driven Crowd Podcast.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for being with us today.
Absolutely. Sorry, I'm still trying to get this thing adjusted.
No worries. No worries. You were in the middle of a move, so we'll cut you some slack.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I was hoping to have my office set up by now, but no dice. So here we are.
All good. All good. Hey, you're used to operating out of pretty confined spaces, so you're making it work.
Trying. Absolutely. Yes. I mean, this is much more spacious than what I'm used to, for sure. Definitely bigger than a tour bus or a yacht.
Yeah, for sure. So tell me, how did you get into the crazy life that is yours?
Wow. Huge question, I suppose. I did a talk earlier this year for something called the Chef Summit that's at St. Thomas University down in Miami. And my entire talk was about non-traditional culinary careers. So it's an entire room full of chefs, most of which are, older, and there's a lot of students in there. And I know there's a lot of people that go into this career, especially with kind of a 5 or 10 year plan. I've never been one of those people. I feel like if I had a goal when I started this, or I had some kind of a 5 or 10 year plan for what I wanted to do, that I never would have been open to the opportunities that have presented themselves to me, because I'm a yes person within reason. For the most part, though, if sounds like an amazing opportunity, or something really interesting, or something that I'm really passionate about, or something I don't know a lot about, I'll jump at the opportunity to do it, because it's such a diverse career and it's so portable. That's part of the reason why I chose it. I figured that going into it, people are always going to be hungry. So there's always going to be a need for someone like me in just about any application, right? And I can take it with me anywhere. It's nice to be able to take my knives, and it's nice to be able to take some of my equipment with me if I need it, but it's not necessary. All I need is me, and I can do this anywhere.
Totally portable career. You don't need any specific licenses or anything like that. So that's really interesting. So tell me this, how did you end up, falling in love with cooking, or how did you end up with cooking as your career?
Out of necessity, I think. My mom, when I was younger, was really good at making reservations, and that's about it. So I think part of it was survival. No, when I was in college, I worked in restaurants, and I used to work for Panera Bread. I was a corporate trainer for them for a little while, and I really loved the industry. I was an athlete when I was younger, and I always liked the team sport type atmosphere where everybody's kind of working together for a common goal. And that's what it felt like being in a restaurant and working in a food service operation. We're all trying to achieve the same thing together and adding different elements of it depending on what our specialties are and what we're good at. And I always really liked that. So I wasted my college money on philosophy and world religions and realized that that was going to be kind of a career dead end unless I wanted to teach. Um, so I didn't have any college money left and I decided to go to culinary school. And I didn't go to a expensive, fancy one. I went to a community college and I got extremely lucky. The gentleman who had retired to the Tampa Bay area, who was my professor, used to be very high up in the American Culinary Federation, and he would get requests for jobs all the time for workers, cheap, knowledgeable labor, i.e., college students. And so he was the one who set me up with my first real job. And through the course of your culinary career, half of your job or half of your degree is on the job training, externships. So you gain experience in various places. And I had always worked in family run health food stores. And almost 25 years ago, that was crazy. There was no Whole Foods. There was no Trader Joe's. It was little family run health food stores all over the place. So I worked in a bunch of those all over the Tampa Bay area and really enjoyed it. But everybody thought I was insane, including him. And he said, only hippies eat health food and you're never going to make any money because at that point in time, the traditional culinary was either a hotel or a restaurant or a catering operation. And I wasn't really interested in any of those. And so he got a call from a brand new outdoor amphitheater that was opening up in Tampa. And they needed cheap, knowledgeable labor, college students. And so he recommended me for it. And I went down there, and the very first show that I ever did, the very first concert I ever worked was a Jimmy Buffett concert. And so for me, growing up on the water and loving that lifestyle, it was like God, Jimmy Buffett. So it was pretty much the coolest thing ever until the next coolest thing ever happened. So being able to start with Jimmy Buffett was kind of a great way to do it. And then I just went on from there. So I ended up doing several years worth of touring on the road with bands and cooking for them because they wanted somebody with a health food background. They do a lot of very destructive things to their bodies over the years. And one of the things that they really do find important is feeding themselves healthy food when they have somebody to do it for them. So that's why I was there. So I just happened to be the only health food chef anybody knew. So
that's crazy how that opportunity came about for you with the health food background. I've been to a couple of Jimmy Buffett concerts, and oh wow, like the party starts basically the morning before the concert. He played over here at the Frisco Toyota Stadium, and there were legit like tour buses in the parking lot. People, I guess, just follow them around the country, and they brought their own sand. Like, they literally made a beach in the parking lot. It was crazy.
Oh yeah, I have been to, I can't even count now, dozens of Buffett concerts. Some of them I never even buy tickets to. I just go to tailgate because that's. You don't even have to go in. You can hear the entire concert the entire day that you're tailgating. And then by the time you have imbibed enough, it's time to just go home and go to sleep.
Exactly. Yeah. Just call it a day, right? It's definitely the way cheaper way to do it.
Oh, for sure. It's more of a celebration of a lifestyle than anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So touring with the rock bands, did you just wake up one day like, how is this my life?
I mean, somewhat surreal, but I feel like you're busy enough. And most of the time, it was not super glamorous all the time. Like being in Erie, Pennsylvania in December is not glamorous. And being inside the concrete bowels of an arena is not glamorous. But there definitely were some amazing parts of it. One of the things that we got to do, I used to tour with Trans-Siberian Orchestra.
Oh, yeah.
And because we toured during the Christmas season, there was a lot of really fun things that we got to do as a result of that. And one of them was being able, when we were in North Carolina, being able to go tour one of the NASCAR facilities. The guy who was in charge of the NASCAR facility there was a huge TSO fan. So he invited the band and part of the crew to come and check out the facility there, which was amazing.
That is so cool.
So some of it was kind of fun. Yeah.
So how did you transition from the kind of the touring with the bands to yachts?
Luck. One of my tour managers contacted me and said, "Hey, I know you're not touring right now. I have a buddy who has a boat that needs a chef for this thing. Can you do it?" And I was like, "Boat, cook, sure."
I can do those two things.
Yeah. Yeah. That doesn't sound too complicated. Little did I know. But yeah, I mean, just right place, right time, just getting a phone call and saying yes. And that really is, I would say, the driving force of most of the things that I have gotten myself into. And some of them are not nearly as exciting or interesting or glamorous, but some of them definitely are. And that was one of them. It was just, they were familiar with me and my specialty and my work ethic and recommended me for it. And I was available. So I did it.
How was that transition going from basically kind of having all the space that you need, having solid ground to stand on, to cooking on a boat?
It was definitely a challenge. The spatial issue is the biggest challenge
Sure.
there. A lot of land-based chefs think they can make that transition very easily, and they just don't realize the logistics that are involved within it. An easy way to compare it for somebody that's not familiar with private yachting is you're basically cooking in something that's slightly more advanced than an RV. One of the things that you have to be really cognizant of when you're on a boat is that the power is very limited. So if I'm running the grill, I can't necessarily, because it's electric, it has to be. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but fiberglass is fairly flammable, so they don't allow you to do propane. So everything's electric, but it sometimes, depending on the power pole, you cannot do a grill and the oven at the same time. So you have to plan your meals around those kinds of things. It's a lot more of a challenge logistically than you would think. And then spatially, sometimes some of these boats that I'm on, I have 8 guests, 4 crew, and we're going to be gone for a week away from grocery stores. So I have to, with a regular household refrigerator, store everything that I need for a week in refrigeration and freezer and that. So you have to be extremely organized. It's a challenge, but it takes time to learn all those things, which is why now I am teaching a class. The next one will be this spring for FIU. And it's all about the logistics of being a private yacht and a state chef, because those things are very closely tied together. Lots of crossover there. So after 20 years of bumping my head up against a wall and learning the hard way, I'm hoping to mitigate that for the new generation of chefs coming into the industry.
That is really cool. And I would imagine too, you got to be careful like where you put stuff down, right? I mean, boats shift, things can fall off counters and screw up all kinds of things, I would imagine.
Oh, not only that, but the surfaces themselves, like the countertop. I've had yacht owners that were like, "Oh my God, isn't this the prettiest thing ever?" I'm like, the least practical thing to put in a kitchen. Like the moment that anything touches this, it's going to die. Like soy sauce will get on it and turn it brown. Like this is a nightmare, but it's pretty.
So you got to like put tablecloths over all of the surfaces while you cook.
Well, there's actually like plastic mats. I have one on my dining table downstairs, actually, but it's like a plastic mat that you can get in the dimensions of the countertop or cut it to the thing. And that is what you end up using. But even at that, it's not super sanitary if you don't clean it every single day, multiple times a day. So it's just, yeah. Yachts are not always practical, but they're pretty, aren't they?
So you clearly enjoyed whenever you did this and you started doing more of it, the culinary on the yachts. Tell me, how did that transition into a reality show?
Luck again. A girlfriend of mine was down in St. Martin on charter, and she was out with her crew. And this was at the point in time where people didn't care, like the owners didn't care if you were wearing your shirt that had the boat name on it. Now they care a little more. But she was out with her crew and they were partying after a successful trip. And this woman walked up to her and she said, "My name is Rebecca. I work in reality television. I used to work on yachts when I was younger in New England. I've always had an idea to do a show about this. What do you think?" And my girlfriend was like, "I think it's a great idea. I want nothing to do with it. Call my friend Adrienne." Because we have talked about it for years. There were reality shows about everything else. We knew it was a matter of time. And so we had always, after our trips and once we all got together as groups, we would sit around and have a couple of adult beverages and be creative about how that storyline would play out. So we've talked about it for years, knowing that it was inevitable that it would happen, as long as the reality TV trend continued, which
Right.
obviously it has.
Absolutely.
So in those conversations, those late nights that she had overheard or been a part of those conversations, she knew that I was the right person to put in touch with her. So from the first time that I talked to Rebecca to the point where my show actually aired was almost 4 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I helped them with the teaser. I helped them with logistics. I helped them with understanding the ins and outs of the yachting industry. And then we did the sizzle reel, which we pitched to Bravo, MTV, and VH1. And Bravo was obviously the one that got it. So I went through that entire process with them. So by the time we actually got to the part where we were filming, initially, I was supposed to be the chef on the show. And the guy who was the first mate on my season was supposed to be the captain. We were also supposed to have a slightly smaller vessel. Once they realized how small, 130-foot boat sounds really big until you have 8 guests, 6 crew, and a camera crew of 8 or 10. You run out of space really fast.
Yeah.
And so they decided at the last minute they needed a bigger boat, which is how we ended up with Honor. Also, the real name is Corder Leone, and with Captain Lee as the captain instead of Alex. And then they decided to even out the crew dynamics that they wanted a male chef. So they said, we understand that we were going to have you as the chef and that's what you really do. But would you be interested maybe in being the chief stew instead? And I was like, well, it's not rocket science. Sure, let me do a job I've never done for the very first time ever on national television. That sounds like a really great idea. Let me do that.
You are a yes person.
Yeah.
And so the show starts. Is it what you expect it to be? Like, give us the tea on being a reality TV star.
So there's nothing different except for there's more people in your way. And it's the same exact thing as working on a boat. And what I will say is that they intentionally chose personalities they knew would conflict. Like in a normal yachting situation, you would choose people that would synergize well with your already established team. But since we were all coming from everywhere, like there wasn't an established team already. So they did psych evals on us ahead of time to figure out how far they could push us before we would snap and lose our shit. And they also personality tested us to know who would work well and who wouldn't. And obviously, if everybody knew what they were doing and they did it, there wouldn't be a show to watch.
It'd be pretty
wouldn't
boring.
Be interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So I get all of that. And those are the unrealistic parts of the reality TV element, right? Is that normally you want to hire people you'll get along with. I had no control over the hiring. I didn't even know who they had hired until we all got there. So that's the unreality of it, I guess. And on top of that, they're casting the guests as well. So they want where the people that I work for right now, like I have a short list of clients that I work with anymore on boats. I don't really do a ton of yachting these days. But the ones that I do are people that I know and that I enjoy and that are respectful and that are not throwing drinks on each other or bringing cocaine onto the boat or any of those kind of things, right? So they're people that I choose to be around at this point in my career. Early on, not so much. Early on, you just got to eat a lot of it in order to be able to get where you want to be. But for the purposes of the TV show, they really wanted people that would be interesting to watch besides us. So that made for a more unique element than I'm used to as well.
Yeah, and having watched several of the episodes, they definitely found unique people and I would say crazy people as well. And you mentioned, the bringing the drugs on board. That actually happened. You were telling me before the show that was the very first episode.
The very first trip. So at what they were going to do, or what they were talking about doing while they were going through the editing process, was to flip some of the trips around, because they did not believe that the audience would believe that that was the first trip that we ever had, was with those people. But because of the rest of the storyline and the other things that happened, and us still being in the place where we were getting to know each other, it really would have messed up the entire timeline. So they had to leave it as the first trip. But even they couldn't believe that that happened. And they did not really understand how seriously we as a crew, or Lee as a captain, were going to take that no drugs policy. It said it in the contract that everybody signed. It said it in the contract that the charter guests signed. But clearly those gentlemen did not take that so seriously. And so they lost their money and they got kicked off of their trip early on national television. So I feel like it's more embarrassing for them than anybody else.
Yeah. And none of them certainly claimed it, at least on what we saw. And nobody seemed overly surprised when the captain came out and said, "Hey, we found drugs." They all just kind of sat there like, yeah. So once again, very interesting guest. Very interesting guest. So what are some things you learned from that show that you've taken with you as you've continued to advance your career?
Don't do reality television anymore. I will say the one regret I have is that I because I had been so much a part of the process ahead of time, I was so stuck on trying to make sure that the show had some level of professionalism to it, because I was really worried that it was going to turn out to be like Real World on a Yacht, that it was just going to be a drunken monkey show. And I didn't want selfishly, I didn't want the first representation of my friends and my family saw of my career for the previous 8 years to be that. And so I took myself overly seriously, which obviously came through in the show. And then the contrast of me and then the rest of them just really not taking anything seriously whatsoever just made it infinitely more frustrating. I wish I would have just relaxed into the process a little bit more and actually enjoyed it, because I was entirely too stressed out and I didn't enjoy any of it. As soon as we wrapped filming and I flew home, I stayed in like a dark room for 2 weeks. I told my boyfriend to just not even bother me. Like, I just didn't want to talk to anybody, I was really confused. There was obviously a lot of things that happened because I'm not watching the TV screens like the producers are. I don't know how this is going to turn out. I don't know when it's going to be ready. I don't know when I can tell people, like, you're allowed per your NDA to tell your close friends and family or your boyfriend or whoever, like, you're allowed to tell a close circle, but I can't like go on Facebook and announce it until it really happens. So it was a year and a half, almost a year and a half between the time that we filmed and the time that it actually came out, which was really nerve-wracking.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Because even at that, I'm a year and a half further into my career. Is this going to ruin my career? Is it going to make it so that nobody will ever want to hire me on a boat again? As it turns out, being the bitch in that situation, not the worst thing in the world. Like, you might watch the rest of the people on that show and they seem like they'd be really cool to have a drink with at a bar. And I wholeheartedly agree. But you wouldn't want them managing your multi-million-dollar asset. So
no, not at all.
There's that. So it was pretty much job security for me going forward.
So, people are mean. How did you deal with, as the episodes were being released, all of the social media response and I'm sure name calling and whatever that people would throw your direction?
Not well. Actually, we had death threats. There was a couple of us on my cast that had death threats early on. I
Really?
I didn't deal with it very well at first. And then it occurred to me maybe 5 months into the whole process that people are criticizing me for a job that I have never done before. If I had actually been in the chef position, I think I might not have recovered from that because that's the job that I actually love to do. So I think it was almost a blessing in disguise, despite the fact that I was very disappointed that I wasn't going to be doing the job that I love to do. I think that it was a blessing in disguise that I wasn't picked apart on that part of my career, that people were picking me apart for not being the perfect chief stew. And I'm like, who's ever perfect at something the very first time that they ever do it? Like, I can't, I can't be mad about that. And I realized that a lot of those people that were saying all those really nasty, ugly things, because that's how I find out, by the way, when they're running marathons of my show now, because they do it a couple times a year. Well, they'll start with season one and just run all the way through them. And the only way that I know that that's happening is that I'll open up my Twitter and there'll be a whole bunch of new nasty comments, a whole slew of people that have never seen it before. So I'm like, oh, there must be a marathon of season one on now. Really
Wow.
ugly tweets again. Yeah, or Instagram. I get them all over. But I don't take it to heart anymore because it's not indicative of who I am. I also realized that personality wise, it was the most, I was in fight or flight mode. And it was the most stressed out I've ever been. So being able to look back on it now and not take it personally when people say things like that, even if it is pretty nasty, like now what I'll do is I'll screenshot it and I'll put it up on my Instagram and be like, check out my fan mail. Love it. Hashtag blessed. You know what I mean? Now I
Yeah.
can joke about it. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. And these people have no lives and I do. So there's that.
So post reality TV. So when this is out, you said it's a year and a half from the actual filming of the show. What are you doing at that point in time?
I was still working in yachting.
In yachting? Okay.
I used to go back and forth for a while. I did yachting during the winter because who wants to be in Erie, Pennsylvania in December? Nobody. So I used to spend most of my time in the Bahamas and the Caribbean on boats during the winter. And then during the summer, I would tour. And I did that for a while. I went back and forth for a while and I did a bunch of events and stuff like that. You mentioned some of those in your intro, but yeah, primarily I was still yachting. And it's astounding. There are yacht owners that I've worked for, people I've done charters for, that as soon as they get on the boat and they realize it's me from the show, they lose it and they're so excited and they think that this is the greatest thing in the world because we don't advertise it necessarily that way. I've had people reach out and ask me to come do charters on their boats as the chief stew because that's what they saw on the show and they pay me
Right.
for it. And I'm like, I mean, sure, whatever. That's easy. But for the most part, it hasn't really affected my career very much. If there's ever been a job that I haven't gotten because of my participation in the show, it wasn't made evident to me.
Yeah.
So I'm not, again, being the bitch on the show and the boss is not necessarily the worst character assassination they could make on me. They thought they were doing me a disservice, but it actually ended up helping. So
Well, there you
there's
go.
that.
Yeah. It seems like your luck just continues, right? And it's funny because every time I ask you about this different career change or something else in your life, and you've mentioned the word luck like 3 or 4 times, but every single time one of those is related to relationships you've developed. And
Yes.
we've talked previously about the importance of relationships and networking. And at our office, we say, hey, look, it's all about relationships. I don't care who it is, if it's insurance adjusters, if it's opposing counsel, if it's clients, if it's providers, whatever, it's all about relationships. And so how do you go about doing your networking? Because you're completely different world than what I live in. I mean, your networking goes internationally. So how do you go about doing that? And how do you go about staying in front of your network, if you will?
I think being present, social media has been extremely helpful in maintaining a lot of those friendships and relationships. There are people that I met my very first yachting season ever that I'm still great friends with, that I still send memes to on a near daily basis. I think the advent of social media has been so amazingly helpful because we're all spread out as like you said, internationally, that being able to touch base with each other, I knew when I was coming out to Dallas that there were two yachties that are based in Dallas, and one of them actually happened to be home at the time. She lives just a few minutes away from where I was in Frisco. So she's a yacht chef. You wouldn't think middle of Dallas, like, of course she's going to be there, but she was. So we got to hang out while I was there. So that stuff is kind of cool because people really do come from all over. All you need is a plane ticket to get where you need to be on a boat. So I think being able to maintain my network that way, and if there's something I'm really interested in, or if in the midst of another event, I have a conversation with another chef and they say, oh yeah, we should really talk about you coming to do the US Open in Pittsburgh. And remembering to follow up with those people to be like, hey, you remember when you said something about the US Open? Do you still need help with that? And being able to follow up with those people too, because sometimes, they get really excited about the stuff they're doing or really distracted by stuff that they're doing, and being able to follow up is huge. And especially in the events industry, because those gigs are so finite.
Right.
And being able to remember, didn't you also say something about the Preakness? Oh, you don't need help for that, but you definitely need help for the US Open. Okay, great. Let's do it. Or, the Masters or something like that. So just being able to keep those kind of things straight and keep those lines of communication open, and touching base and being like, hey, I'm in Dallas. I remembered that you were from here. Are you around? Be lovely to see you, kind of thing. So, yeah.
How do you,
go ahead.
I was gonna say, how do you keep track of that? Do you have obviously we all have our phones with our contact information. Do you just rely on that? Or do you have an app that you use or a spreadsheet or some sort of system that you use just all in your noggin?
Yeah. I mean, I drown or destroy a cell phone a year. So so the cloud isn't always my friend. It's just remembering, just being able to be like, okay, and usually what I'll do is if somebody mentions something like that to me, like I was at this place, you'll absolutely have to look it up once we're done here. It's called the Chef's Garden. So I was working on a yacht last summer for the whole summer up in Cleveland. I know, you wouldn't think. We were like the only yacht in Cleveland for the whole summer for a guy who owns a NASCAR team. It was an awesome summer. I'm originally from Cleveland, so it was really cool to be able to spend a summer on a yacht in Cleveland. But I was very close to the Chef's Garden, which is in Huron, Ohio, so not that far away. And it's a really special little place where they do, really tiny little vegetables and microgreens and really fun, cool stuff. Like Disney is one of their biggest clients. They send almost everything to the Disney properties. It's really cool stuff. And so I got to spend a bunch of time out there, and I got to network with a bunch of amazing chefs. Rachel Ray just filmed a show out there. I think they just did season 2 maybe, but I was there last summer when they were filming season 1. So just a really cool, special little place, and it attracts like-minded chefs that are interesting and different. And so there's an event they do at the end of the summer called Roots, and it's just a gathering. It's a conference of a bunch of really amazing chefs. And so we were chefs cooking for chefs, and it was
tough
really
audience
a lot
right
of fun.
there.
Yeah. And so being like in the workshop with the elves kind of thing is a really cool thing to be able to do. I would consider Lee Santa. But yeah, I mean, it was an amazing experience. And several of the chefs that I connected with that were just there, like, we weren't getting paid. We were just there to play in the kitchen with each other, to like be able to be creative and do different stuff. And that's how I ended up getting connected with the US Open and some other things. So it's just through the process of that. So what I'll do is I'll be like, what were those dates? I put it in my calendar. I set a reminder to follow up with them. And I make sure I put attach their contact to it so that I remember who it was that I talked to about that. Because then 3 days worth of culinary, playing all over the place and having all these conversations, I didn't want to forget who those people were that I talked to. And when you're in that situation and they see how hard you're working and how dedicated or creative or whatever it is that you are, they're more excited about having you come in and help them too. So that's how we kind of all pass stuff back and forth to each other, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think the following up part is huge. We can go to a networking event. We can just meet somebody for lunch or dinner or whatever. Have a great connection. Great connection. If you don't follow up, it just fades away, and you've basically just completely wasted your time and the opportunity. Maybe you'll see that person again. Maybe you won't. When you do, who knows if you'll remember their name? That kind of a thing. And so I think that's such a huge point, is the follow up. So tell me this, as a chef, I would imagine one of the key drivers in you being at the top of your game is your creativity. So how do you harness that? How do you stay inspired? What do you use to kind of get into a creative mode or somehow grow in your abilities?
So one of the things that's always been a real challenge, especially in the private space, where what I do is, event to event to event, it can be a real challenge to create opportunities for continuing education. And so I created a program here in Fort Lauderdale a couple of years ago to be able to offer 1-day targeted skills classes that were classes that chefs were not embarrassed to take or to say that they were taking. Like, it was one entire day on sous vide, just all the things that you can do with a sous vide, because it's an amazing piece of compact equipment that's not hard to store, but the amount of things that you can do with it are insane. And there were things, I had somebody else come in and teach the class because there were things that even I didn't know. I have a Jamie, who is a chef at the Chef's Garden. They actually have a school there that's called the Culinary Vegetable Institute, and he teaches an entire class on vegetable cookery, all the things that you can do with vegetables. And they do some really cool stuff. We did an entire day on sourdough and fermentation. To answer your question in the briefest way possible, though, I intentionally put myself into situations where I'm surrounded by people that I would also consider creative and driven. And by that, I am by osmosis picking it up, if that makes sense.
Yeah. You feed
So
off each
being able
other.
to put myself into positions where I might be a little out of my comfort zone, but I know somebody else is going to be there that has more knowledge in those things than I do, or just wanting to work side by side with somebody else. Not everything. When I'm working on yachts, yes, it's a team atmosphere, but I'm pretty much an island. When I'm working events, I'm working surrounded by a bunch of other chefs. And if I'm not teaching in that situation or mentoring in that situation, I'm hoping to be taught in some other way. And working in a collaborative environment like that, you pick up a lot just by degree of nature, just by being there. So I think being able to put yourself in situations that you might be a little bit uncomfortable in, just because it's not my specialty doesn't mean I can't learn. Like, I can honestly say I love barbecue. I cannot say that I am an expert at it because yachts traditionally don't have space for large smokers. So it's not inherently, it's not something that I have had access to for a long period of time. So while it might not be my specialty, being able to work with the Guy Fieri Foundation, for instance, where they have a big toe behind smoker that they bring, and one that's built into this awesome food truck that they have, so that when we go do things like the Tunnel to Towers events or the disaster relief, I'm learning from those guys who are experts, who did own barbecue restaurants, who do that as their primary function in culinary, and learn a lot. So being able to put myself into positions where I am forcing myself to learn by way of having to do it, which is always a good thing, because there's always going to be something to learn. That's the thing. I'm never going to learn the full breadth of what there is to know, but surrounding myself by talented people and being able to stay in touch with those people. And I have a buddy, Keith Saracen, who is a white guy from Boston, but he is one of the US's most preeminent chefs as far as Indian food. Like, he's just amazing. He did an entire dinner at the Soho House down here in Miami, and it's the most beautiful, like, you don't usually think of these things together. Stunningly beautiful plates of Indian food. All the flavors were there, but by looking at it, you would never know that that's what it is, because what your normal presentation of Indian food is something in a bowl because it has no form of its own kind of thing.
Right.
Right. It's a dish of something. It's not the most stunningly beautiful dish of butter chicken you've ever seen. Like it was a chicken thigh that was roasted and they had taken the butter, seasoned butter, and slid it underneath the skin and then roasted it that way. And that it was just amazingly inspiring,
Very
to
cool.
be able to see something like that. So,
Well, we're going to release this episode and you're going to have some Texan reach out to you going, hold on, I do have a smoker on my yacht. Let's get you out here and get you taught up.
I'm in.
Yeah, there you go. So tell me, teamwork is huge. One of the things that I love seeing in candidates who are applying for positions at our firm is some sort of a history of, obviously lots of athletics, that's team oriented, or really something where they're a server and or in the hospitality industry where they're having to interact with people. As you well know, having grown up in the hospitality industry, people aren't always nice. And so you get to deal with conflict and gain some history there, experience there. But I love seeing that. And I love seeing people who are able to work well in teams. When you're in charge, how do you go about developing your team?
It depends. Especially, first of all, I will say to that, that's amazing. I feel like more employers should look for things like that. And then maybe it would be a slightly more desirable thing to have on your resume, even though it's not necessarily applicable to the functionality of working in your firm. The personality that comes with being in hospitality very much does. I feel like every college student, just so they have some level of empathy, should spend one semester working in hospitality at the very least. I think every student that goes through college should spend at least one semester working in hospitality, because I think it makes you inherently a more empathetic human, and maybe makes you a little bit more understanding of all of the hospitality industry, not just restaurants, right?
Yeah.
All of those little facsimiles that people have to go through in customer service and everything else. And if you never hold any kind of hospitality or customer service job in your whole damn life, and then all of a sudden you're an adult with a bunch of power and a job, like, I'm not sure that's a very healthy thing for you. And so I love that. I love that you look for that, because I think it's really important. Building a team really depends on what the environment is. When I went to do the US Open this year, I guess I'm kind of sort of glad that I didn't know a lot about what I was stepping myself into, but I ended up with a kitchen of 60 people I've never worked with before. And we had to do 1,700 meals a day together. And it's just, look, I'm going to be firm but fair. We're getting right into this. I don't scream. I don't yell. I don't throw things. If I am yelling at you, it is because whatever you are doing right in this moment is inherently a danger to you or someone else. And I am going to yell at you to stop it so that I very definitely get your attention. I had a server that walked through the kitchen day one of the US Open with a fillet knife pointed away from her, walking into the kitchen. And I stopped the entire room. And of course I embarrassed her, but that was the point, because nobody else did it the rest of the weekend. I promise you that. And it wasn't berating this human. It was stopping them because the action that they were taking, if she had tripped and that knife had gone in errant direction, it could have really been harmful to somebody.
Yeah.
And so those kind of things I will very quickly amend. But that's about the only time you're ever going to hear me raise a voice, unless I'm trying to get confirmation that the kitchen has heard whatever the command was that was going out in the kitchen. Kitchen, 5 minutes to service. Heard. Okay, moving on. If I have to raise the level of my volume just so that everybody in the kitchen can hear me over whatever activities are happening, I don't consider that yelling. That's just communicating in a kitchen where there's lots of noise happening. But beyond that, I enjoy mentoring people. I really enjoy helping to foster the next generation. I really enjoy teaching. That's something that at this point in my career, I feel like I have built up enough knowledge to be useful in that capacity, which is fun. And to be able to help mitigate the heartache of the next generation that's coming after me, I suppose. But for me, leadership looks like a lot of different things. But I feel like a lot of chefs, especially in the personality types of chefs that most people are used to seeing because of reality television, is a bunch of hotheads, but that's not how I operate. For me, it's much more about fostering an environment where if you have a question, I want you to feel comfortable enough to ask me, not that I'm going to scream at you for even doing it in the first place. I never grew up in kitchens like that. I know you probably won't be surprised to hear that hippie health food stores, that was not really the MO of the chefs there. So it was much more of a teamwork atmosphere and much more of a cooperative environment than what you see on TV. And so that's how I operate. There is nothing really besides someone doing something very unsafe that will cause a reaction out of me, because I've seen just about everything. I have been on a boat that caught fire and sank. I have been in a first aid medical situation where somebody has passed away. I have been in natural disaster zones where people are getting the first hot food they've had in 8 days, and they have tears in their eyes because we're giving them a meatball like with no shoes on. There's not a lot that's going to happen in a standard kitchen that is going to cause a reaction out of me. And I feel like I wish a lot more chefs would have that type of humility, because it does just perpetuate the stereotype, really. But generally, the personality types that are drawn to a position like what I do to be an executive chef are the type of people that would be the same as a doctor with ultimate authority, or a pilot with ultimate authority, or a captain with ultimate authority. That's just the type of personality that is drawn to this. That doesn't mean that everybody has to act that way, is the difference. And I most certainly do not. So I go into situations trying to learn and understand what it is, especially if it's an operation that I'm not super familiar with, and then try to figure out the best way to steer it in the right direction.
Awesome.
And help everybody along the way.
All right. Well, Adrienne, we are out of time. We are at the stop point. So thank you.
That went so fast.
Yeah, it does. It always does. It always does. But thank you so much for your time today. Thank you so much for all of the conversations leading up to this as well. And thank you everyone for tuning in to this episode of the Driven Crowd podcast. We'll see you next time.